just want to talk about fixing mistakes in watercolor, and the deal with mistakes is it's never the end of the world. I don't like the word mistakes. I would rather call them opportunities. And so then, instead of fixing mistakes, we are working with our opportunities. And I've just got a piece of scrap paper here, and I want to talk about how to handle mistakes. Don't panic. Don't throw it away immediately. Just let's try to figure out what we can do to make our mistakes not quite so intimidating. So we're going to start just by talking about what to do when you do something you don't like when your paint is wet. Some of this will be familiar to you. Some of it might be new. Some of it might just make you think about mistakes in a different way. So this is a phthalo, I can't remember. It's a phthalo teal, I think. Isn't that a beautiful color? Jean Haynes gave us some samples of paint when we were there, and that's one of the ones I tried out. That I out of all my Daniel Smith colors, there was a few that she had that I hadn't tried. So here I've got a beautiful, rich, dark phthalo teal. And let's say you put down color like so, and maybe it comes out a little more than I want it to. So the first thing I can do when I make a mistake and my paint is still wet is just quickly go in and lift it. So usually it helps to moisten it a bit. And I do work with nice juicy color so that I can have a little time to think about what I'm going to do. So you can see I lifted that little slash right out, and it's not really visible anymore. And the deal with working with nice juicy color is the longer something's wet, the easier it is to do that blotting and lifting. And additionally, another thing you might do is if you put your color down too dark, well, let's just spread it out. Let's use that color. Instead of wasting it, blotting it off, let's use it. Let's spread it out and let it dilute across the page. And that just gives us more lovely color to work with. And also, that line that came out there is just faded away beautifully. So sometimes it's just, rather than blotting out and scrubbing a color, maybe you just need to fade an edge away and let it bleed into whatever's beside it. And so that's two ways to fix mistakes while your paint is still wet. Blot it or lift it. You can use your brush to lift as well. You can blot with paper towel, or you can use a thirsty brush to sponge up some color. And that's a good way to do it if you need a little more control, because you can use the tip of your brush just to suck up that color, as you can see. And that just gives you a little more control over where and how you lift the color, whereas a paper towel is just a little bit bigger. So that's two great ways to lift up some color that you put down while it's still wet, color you don't want to see there. When color starts to dry, it gets a little bit tougher. And I generally try not to lift color after my paint has dried, but it is something you can do, so we're going to talk about that because it's possible, and it sometimes is an option. I had a painting I was working on recently where I made a mistake, and as much as I tried to fix it in other ways, I just couldn't do it. So I took that mistake, that opportunity, and I ended up lifting that color right out, and I'll show you how I did that in a moment. I'm just going to flip over here. I have this little painting. It's a sketch that you'll actually see me demonstrate in my Craftsy online course, Better Painting with Watercolor Sketches. And I've already, in a couple places, done some mistake fixing when I tried to do this as a live broadcast, and it didn't work yesterday. Oh, that was frustrating. So here I have some lovely, just a lovely little painting, but it's nothing terribly special, so I don't mind doing a little bit of fiddling around just as a demonstration for you guys. Maybe I don't like the way these trees have bled down into the river. So let's say that's our issue. Now, some colors are staining colors. They are not going to want to move for you after they have dried, and then you have to get a little bit more creative with how you fix those. But most colors will at least lift a little bit. Even if they stain, they will still lift somewhat. I'm just moistening this area that I want to lift with my paintbrush. And sometimes that color, all that your color needs is just to be moistened, and it'll actually kind of cling to your brush and lift off. So you can rub it with your brush, then blot your brush, and this color is lifting somewhat. It's getting lighter. It's not going to be a dramatic change. Then I can use my paper towel to blot that wet area, and that will lift color even more. So there's much less of that kind of rusty color bleeding down into the water. And then so that's just lifting with a damp brush. You moisten that area, back and forth gently with your brush. The one thing I like about this is it is gentle, so you're not really hurting the paper. Your brush is gentle enough that it's not going to damage the paper fibers. Whereas if you're blotting and rubbing with paper towel, it will be easier for you to start to tear and flatten the fibers of the paper and give it kind of a pilly look. So, and we don't really want to pill our paper, because when it pills and gets the little bumps and granules here, there's some pilling happening. And when that happens, then it's not going to take the paint smoothly if you want to paint over that. So what I'll do generally is I'll lift the paint as much as I'm able if I need to go back to white or to lighten something, and then I can always go in later after it's dry and tidy up. So say I want to it's still got kind of a soft line there. I'm going in with the teal because why not? And but I can and it's a little bit wet still because I did wet it with my brush, so it is bleeding a little bit. And so you want to make sure it's thoroughly dry after you do your lifting. But then I can go in and tidy it up with my brush and just make it look really nice again. And I don't know what I'm doing, so just fiddling. Don't throw away your paintings because you can always doodle on them. Try ideas, try different color combinations. You just never know what you'll be inspired by. You could take some brilliant cobalt teal blue, throw that in there just to really make the eye look right at that little river. Never know what you can do. And scraps of paper are a great place to experiment because you're not taking any, you're not risking a painting that you really love. Oh, what just happened here? What the heck? Okay, thought I was losing something here. Thought I was losing my camera. Okay, so that's one way to lift is just with your brush. Like I said, it's not going to work super well for staining colors. And sometimes you want to go really drastic. Maybe you want to lift color on a large area, or maybe you want to lift color that you don't think is going to be liftable with your brush. And then you want to go to another household tool. And I'll hold one over here. This is Mr. Clean Magic Eraser. And you can tell I'm Canadian because it's got English and French on the page, or on the box. And this is, you want to make sure if you're using Magic Eraser that you buy the kind without detergents in it. It's just the original. And you can see this is just a little white sponge with a handsome fellow on the top of it. I never noticed that before. And the Magic Eraser is just really an abrasive sponge. And it doesn't feel abrasive, it's just kind of a soft, foamy thing. But it's got enough of a micro scrubber in it that it will kind of buff away the color. And if you have a 2-year-old who likes to draw on your walls, it will take care of that as well. But if you have a mistake in your painting you want to lift and you really want to go to town on it, you want to do a little more drastic surgery, then the Magic Eraser is a great way to go. You just moisten it a little bit so it's damp, and then you want to be gentle. You just start gently wiping it across your area there. And I chose quite a large area just because I can. It's lifting up the paint, so as it starts to get dirty, you need to kind of switch to a different corner, because otherwise it'll just smear that color. There's a little bit of green down in that corner, so you'll get to see it lift, not just the blue, the green as well. I really should find a clean paper towel to work with here. Just blot it again. As you can see, the paper looks pretty much the same as when I started. It does abrade your paper a little bit, but I haven't, if you're very careful, it won't do it so much that it pills. Over here I wasn't being very careful and it did pill in this little strip here. And then you just peel your mask away, and I use a mask to kind of help control where I'm lifting. You could also cut your magic eraser to shape, and as you can see, it lifted almost right back to white. It's still got a bit of a blue tinge. So if generally I think if you're wanting to go back to pure white in an area, the best way to do that is to start over. But or it will look whiter if you put a dark color beside it. So if I want to make this area look really light, I might just want to darken the mountain around it, and that will give me, let me just see here. Anytime you have a very dark color, everything around it's going to look paler. So that gives me that illusion of white paper, even though you and I know there's a little blue tinge inside of that area. So that's another way, two other ways to lift paint off a dry paper, off a dry painting. And now I want to talk about the fifth way, because in my mind the fifth way is the most important, and this goes with the whole mistakes as opportunities way of thinking. And it really is true that mistakes are opportunities for you. And I'd actually like to switch cameras so I can look you right in the eye as I say this, because it's so important. If you're not making mistakes, you are not challenging yourself. You're not learning. And the problem with not making mistakes or fearing mistakes is you're just not going to learn and grow. And let's just move over to another sheet of paper here. And let's see, I don't know if I have a great one to work with. This is just a wash that I made in my Jean Haynes workshop with cling wrap and 2 different colors of paint. And, I've got some little crisp areas where the cling wrap was. The deal with laying down cling wrap like this is you don't have a lot of control over the outcome. So some of it's on the green area, there's a little bit on the orange. These areas, now all of a sudden I have to react to what's happening on the paper and start making decisions about what I want to put on the page. And so I can decide to add darker color, and actually I really like that. But I'm reacting to what's happening on the page, and I'm explaining this to you because that's what we do whether we're making mistakes or just working with something that's happening that we didn't really plan for, which is the case in this painting. I didn't really plan for how those little cling wrap marks were going to come out. They just kind of did their own thing. And I shaped the cling wrap a little bit. So I have to decide what I'm going to do and how I'm going to make this work and become a complete painting. And And I really think it's one of the best ways to handle mistakes is instead of trying to remove them and erase them and lift them out, why wouldn't I try to do something similar to what I'm doing here and just find a way to work with them, to make them, incorporate them into the painting in a way that really is dynamic and beautiful. And that's problem solving in its finest form. I love this little leaf poking out of that appeared here when I put that little stem in. Don't you think that's cool? And before that was just a shape that really could have become anything. And so I get to do that when I'm problem solving in watercolor. I'm taking all these random shapes, and my problem solving is how do I connect them to become a painting and to look like something. In this case, I think leaves and flowers. And that's really what our problem solving does for us. So before you start using these mistake fixing techniques, these lifting techniques that I've showed you, spend a little time thinking, how can I make this a better part of the painting? And just work with it and see if you can make something happen that maybe is even better than what you'd originally planned. It gives you a little bit of, it gives you experience in problem solving. And I like to think of all painting as problem solving. We start out with one big problem, a blank sheet of paper, and our problem is how do we make that blank sheet of paper look like what we've intended it to be. And so the deal with that is, you know, as you start adding paint to that blank paper, your problem changes. It evolves as you continue to add paint. Your problem then becomes, how do I, you know, take what's happening on the paper and make it, you know, into something that really connects with me or I can respond to. And painting loosely is very much about connecting to what's happening on the paper. So I like to take lots of time when I'm working on something like this to really look at what's going on the page, and even especially once you start adding details, every brush stroke becomes important, and you start to really respond to what's happening on the page. You got to give yourself time to do that. And then these mistakes aren't mistakes anymore. They are opportunities to really create something that's going to glow and shine in your painting. And so just have fun with it. And remember that those mistakes are your learning opportunities. If you're not making mistakes, you are not growing. So be free to do it. Give yourself permission to experiment. If you think a painting is irredeemable and there's just nothing you can do to fix it, well, that's when you get to pull out all your vibrant colors and do something super crazy and just see what it does in your painting. So maybe I just want to grab some really fun colors and go a little bit nuts. And I can do that, and I can have a great time saying, you know what, maybe orange does belong in that mountain scene. Or maybe it doesn't, but then I'll know not to try it again next time.